We learn by asking questions. We read books, we assimilate knowledge, we talk to other people, but we actually learn from failing, and we learn about asking questions. But if you ask the right questions in the right way, you can experience everything you need. So for the next half hour, we're going to talk about questions specifically, and we're going to challenge each other with questions and challenge ourselves with questions. So one of the things that we talked about is that people always overestimate their own knowledge base. That's a cognitive bias. Well, the fact is, not only do people overestimate their knowledge base, because they have a knowledge base, they fail to ask questions. You have to let go. That's part of the letting go. Let go of your knowledge base. You don't have to do it in front of other people. You have to do it in front of yourself. You and a mirror. Let go of your knowledge base and look at this as a child would. The perspective of a child changes everything. I mean, if you remember back in the day, Art Linkletter, and now I can't remember the gentleman's name who's doing it. I have a little niece who was at the time 4 years old, and she was peeling from the sun, and she was looking in the mirror and didn't know anybody was listening or watching her, and she said, "Look at that, 4 years old, and I'm wearing out already." But think about it from her point of view and her universe and all that she knew. A younger version of that same girl, her dad's a doctor and worked in a hospital, and said, "Amanda, what does your daddy do?" "He's a doctor." "And where does he work?" "In a hospital." "And what does he do in the hospital, Amanda?" "Kisses boo-boos." And one other childlike view, and this is, again, I'm giving you these not just for the humor and the amusement, but for the perspective. A very dear friend of mine who was supposed to be here and couldn't, her husband just had surgery, Claire Gruppo is Gruppo Levy in New York, a big investment banking firm. And Claire has, at the time, her son was 4 years old, and she had to go to Atlanta on a business trip to sell a company, because that's what they do. Companies come to them, they sell them. So her son, Connor, didn't want her to go. I would have loved to have had her in the room telling this story, because it's just, she does it so well. He said, "Mommy, I don't want you to go." And she said, "Well, I have to go, and I'm going to do this. I have business to do." She comes back, and of course, Connor is very excited. Mommy, you're home. What did you do in Atlanta?" "Well, I saw this man, whatever the name was, and I sold his company for him." And Connor looked at Claire and said, "They needed a mommy to sell their company?" Which, if you've ever sold a company, is a very true statement. But the fact is, look at what you're doing from the child's perspective. The less you know, the more questions you'll ask, the more things you'll discover, the more open you'll be to things. Here's another example. You're all the CEOs of your company, right? What if you left tomorrow? What would the next CEO do with your company? What would they do differently? What would they come in? I just took over as the CEO of a technology company, and I'm doing things very different than my predecessor. So ask yourself, what would a new CEO do with your company, and how would they reimagine it, re-envision it? How would they grow it? What would they do that you're not doing? Now, that begs one other question. Everyone might say, "Well, let's ask what we're doing." How about asking what you're not doing, what not to do? What are we doing that we should not be doing? And how do you know the answer to that? It's taking a child's perspective. It's letting go of your bias. It's letting go of your emotional attachment. It's looking at it through the eyes of the other CEO. If you came into another company, think about it, if you came into your company as a new CEO, and you wanted to make your mark, what is it you would stop doing that they're doing? What is it you'd put in that they're not? And what changes would you make? You have to step outside and get a different perspective. There are a lot of cliches. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. Well, Einstein said, when you find the needle in the haystack, keep looking. You'll find another needle or a better needle. Don't stop. "Oh, that was in the last place I looked." Of course it was in the last place you looked, because you found what you wanted and you walked on. But what if you had kept looking? What if you had kept discovering, digging, questioning? And that looks at the level or the depth of questions that we ask. You might ask why about something and get an answer. But why not ask why 5 more times? Why did you buy gym equipment? Because you want to exercise. Why do you want to exercise? Because I want to lose weight and look better. Why do you want to look better? Because I'll feel better about myself. Why do you want to feel better about yourself? Because I'm single and I want to date. Why do you want to date? Because I want to get married and have kids. So and you can ask these questions, and now you say, oh, you can get in the loop, how do I do this? Why do I want to do that? Every question has who, what, why, when, where, and how. You in a hurry? You catching a train or something? This is your business. This is your life. Take a half an hour every day and just ask these questions. And don't stop. What have you got to lose? Nothing. The thing you have to lose is not doing this, because you discover. You discover more from teaching than you do from learning. So teach what you do to someone. Explain it to them. Tell them what you do. The more you explain it, the better it's going to get. As a kid, I was a journalist, and I did celebrity interviews. And I'm giving a case study because it's important here. It relates to this. I did an interview with Gene Kelly, and Gene Kelly always had the same definition of dance. If you said to Gene Kelly, how would you define dance? You could read it in 1,000 interviews. He didn't even have to think. He could have done a crossword puzzle while he was saying it. And I was determined to change that. So I find out that his passion was exercise for dancers. And he was on the president's council. And this was everything to him, was exercise. So we talked about exercise. And I said, well, how does exercise? I said, an exercise for a ballerina is different than an exercise for a flamenco dancer or a jazz dancer. How do you define dance? Well, now he had to reconstruct everything, because what was his goal? His goal was to help me understand his passion for exercise. So he had to redefine dance for himself as well as me, and came up with this fabulous explanation. I give you that example because when you redefine your topics, your main core topics, it changes everything. Because I promise you, what you believe them to be today is not what they are. You are looking through so many different rose-colored lenses that you're not seeing a varied perspective on this.